I'd like to call the June 7th Board of Adjustments meeting to order. Roll call.
Yep. Waletsky.
Present.
Culhane is absent. Dargis Johnson. Here. Stein.
Here.
Kays.
Here.
Hanson. Here. Ford.
Here.
Olson.
Here.
Dolly is absent. We have a quorum.
All right. We need to approve the May 24th, 2018 minutes.
So moved.
Second? Sorry, who seconded it? Second by Hanson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Minutes approved. First item on the agenda is Heather Jansen, case number 18077.
The applicant desires to use the 2,364 square foot single-family dwelling as a home daycare facility for up to 12 children, including her own. The property surpasses the minimum square footage of interior floor area and outdoor recreation space required per City Ordinance Section 21-14031. Jansen is in the process of state registration. Daycare homes caring for children and home occupations are listed conditional uses for the R3 multifamily residential district per 21-20031 and 21-14031 and 5, and may be approved by the Board of Adjustment provided that such facilities shall provide not less than 35 square feet of interior floor area and 50 square feet of outdoor recreation space for each child. In addition, such facilities shall supply adequate off-street parking or other suitable plan for the loading and unloading of children so as not to obstruct the public streets or create other traffic or safety hazards. And the home occupation is operated in accordance with Chapter 2170. Jansen has acknowledged by signature her understanding and assurance to comply with 2170. The signage was not addressed, and any future signage must comply with 217028. The property has fenced outdoor recreation space. The applicant submitted a site plan. Let me just open that up. And floor plans. And per 21-14031, facilities shall supply adequate off-street parking and other suitable plan for the loading and unloading of children so as not to obstruct public streets or create other traffic or safety hazards. This property has an approximately 40-foot wide paved front yard driveway boulevard, creating an undefined sidewalk over which parking is prohibited. The minimum number of legal-sized and durable surfaced off-street parking spaces required for just the single-family dwelling is 2. However, due to the insufficient 17-foot front yard setback, there is only one legal off-street parking space on the east side of the house, going into the driveway to the garage. This board may consider requiring additional compliant off-street parking spaces as a condition of secondary use approval and to comply with 21-14031 for the safe loading and unloading of children. Chapter 2165, outside storage and display requirements for specific uses. This will be typical to the average single-family dwelling. The landscape and lighting standards, Chapter 2173, there is a minimum tree requirement, and the minimum number of trees to be located on the development site shall be 1 tree per 50 feet of frontage, and there are 0 grass and trees existing in the boulevard front yard due to the excessive paving and curb cut. So this board must determine if the request shows satisfactory provision and arrangement concerning Chapter 2170, Home Occupations and Standards, 210202, 2B7A through H, specific rules governing individual conditional uses, and Chapters 2163, 2165, and 2173 as described previously. If endorsed, this board may consider imposing any conditions of approval deemed necessary for this secondary use. For example, additional off-street parking spaces, fulfillment of boulevard infrastructure requirements, as in the grass and trees are prohibit any future replacement of pavement in excess, etc.
Okay, thank you. So if I'm understanding correctly, there are 4 lot requirements that this property does not presently meet. the regulations with respect to the subject parcel, the minimum lot width, the boulevard requirements, the infrastructure requirements, and the minimum off-street parking.
Correct.
And looking at the application, evidently this property had been previously denied a daycare application based upon at least one of those, the parking requirements. Is that correct?
Yes.
So what has changed between then and now, in your view?
Actually, back in, it was 2007, that there was a different party that came for a daycare home occupation, and it seems that the parcel is much the same as it was at that time.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone to speak before or against this application? Please state your name.
Heather Jansen.
Well, when you get to the microphone.
Heather Jansen.
Okay, thank you. Heather, could you explain to the board here the thought process that you have as far as applying for a home daycare variance under the conditions that effectively are essentially the same as they were the last time, admittedly with a different property owner, but it was denied for much of the same reasons that still exist today?
I have spoken with all of my neighbors there's 3 houses on the northeast corner, and they have a parking lot that is attached to our driveway, and they are willing to allow us to make our driveway a one-way and use since our driveway connects to their parking lot, use their parking lot. I have pictures to exit, so they can exit on 81 through their parking lot.
Where's that at? Where's that at? I don't see it.
Okay, here, I'm sorry. Oh, you can see that. Okay, which one is it?
Yeah, but I don't see it.
This is the driveway from 81 that she's talking about, and you're calling this a parking lot, is that correct?
They made it into, the Google Earth photo is years old, and now that I took a recent picture of up close, that's a gravel parking lot, and it's for Lake area students, and then, so the house that's closest to our driveway is also owned by the same owner, so that's all parking lot, and it's going to be parking lot. And then, I took a picture, but it's grass, it's leading to the gravel. That's all our property and those 2 houses' property, and it's gonna be Lake area students living there. And so she said she would actually like the access to her property for the Lake area students. She wanted to assign parking for her students in those parking lots.
So what you're saying is that they're gonna come out onto 81?
Well, their houses are on 81.
I guess I don't. I need to see more. I don't understand how that's
She's
gonna go.
saying that there is an access in and out here on 81.
Is it by that greenhouse? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And so cars could either come in or out of this access and go in an L-shaped out her access on 3rd is basically what she's saying.
So it's gonna be between that greenhouse and, okay. And the house to the south of the greenhouse?
Yeah, those 2. There's the driveway, and then those 2 are the 2 houses that are the Lake area houses. They're being built. The green ones being
built?
sorry, excuse me. They're remodeling the green one for Lake area students to live in, and they already currently have Lake area students in the brown one.
Is that greenhouse a duplex?
It-
Multifamily?
Yeah, I think so.
So you're gonna drive behind the 2 other houses, that great big one on the corner, and the house just south of there?
Yep.
And they're fine with that?
The owner, I have her name in my folder, owns the green and the one south of her. Those 2 houses she and her husband own, and the driveway's in between those 2 houses. And then the one on the corner that's just north of those 2 houses, has agreed to any access we need as well, if it would help.
The owner's Breichbach.
Okay, who,
Well, if this is going to be a conditioning thing, I think you've got to have something in writing.
which,
that we can
show us
decide.
who owns who, I'm confused, who owns what and where actually the driveway would run.
The driveway will run.
No, who owns what though? I wanna
Okay, this is owned, according to this, by Jeffrey and Cheryl Olson.
Okay,
And this one,
Jeff and Sherry Olson, they live there, right?
Yes.
is Bierschbach,
okay.
and this one is Bierschbach.
So they would enter or exit onto Third Avenue across the pavement and on the pavement on the side yard. And then once it got past the first house on the corner, it would then access the, behind that second house to the south. Could you turn this down a little bit? And go out in between the second and the third. Is that right?
You know, I've driven past there a lot, and I've been you look around and stuff. What about, it just appears that that back parking lot, kind of a muddy mess.
They gravelled it.
Yeah, I know, but I
Oh.
mean, still, it's kind of messy, as in like potholes and stuff
Oh.
like that, is what I'm saying.
We
Because
offered to
they've been remodeling that and stuff a little bit. So what you're saying is that Mr. and Mrs. Bierschbach are going to maintain a parking and a driveway for you forever?
No, they asked me to come here today and see what you guys would have to say, and if you guys approved it, get the requirements, so they need to sign, but we are going to be doing the maintaining. We would be doing the mowing and the snow removal and everything else and signage, so the lake area students know where not to park. That's one thing she said she would like, so it's not obstructing any.
So how many Lake Area students are you going to
I'm not,
have? No, I'm sorry. How many Lake Area students are they going to allow to live in them two homes that are going to share the same parking lot that you're going to drive through?
there's 8 currently living in the big brown one, and I think there's only room for 2 in the green one. 8 maybe couples, like 4 apartments, 8 people living total in the brown one, and then in the green one, 2 families or 2, yeah.
So you're saying how many people, let's say 2 people per apartment, what are you talking, 10 cars?
That's what she wants to avoid, and that's why she said to get your guys' opinion on how it would work. And she said assigned parking is something they would like to do.
Is there enough parking spaces on these 2 lots to allow 10 cars in a driveway?
In my driveway? No.
No, behind the 2 homes for you to access out.
Yep.
And then for all 10, supposedly everybody's going to have their own car.
Yeah,
There's going to be enough parking and driveway
Yep.
in the back of them homes?
yep.
Ken, what is,
We've
Ken, what
never had a chance to assess that yet. This is the first time we're hearing of it too, so.
is this property zoned R3? And those houses that are being converted from single family to multiple family, that's an allowable use in the R3 zone?
And has been done by permit, yep.
And when they come in and get their building permits to reconvert those homes, we do an assessment of parking,
We do.
and that hasn't been done yet.
Well, for that, but now we're changing the equation a little bit by saying the permanent driveway.
So in their permit, they have parking spaces for 8 cars behind the house?
They have parking spaces for what they're required to have for their fourplex.
Okay, that's all I was saying, okay.
And Kenny, how many cars does that allow?
Again, I'd have to research, I haven't, well, it depends on if it's 1 bedroom or 2 bedroom or whatever, so.
Okay. And then the house to the north is also a multifamily structure as well, up north of the proposed driveway exiting.
That one is, but they haven't come in and gotten a permit. They've just,
Couple-
it's just been paint, carpet. They haven't had it redone. Yeah, right. I say there's no new permit on that. That's just maintenance work they've done on that, so.
I think I want to compliment you, Heather, on your creativity, trying to solve the problem that caused this permit to be denied, or this to be denied, this conditional use. I just look at the regulation not to obstruct public streets or create other traffic or safety hazards. And I feel very uncomfortable that that's exactly what's going to happen here. It's so gray, so ambiguous, so unusual, and is it precedent setting for other people creating a private alleyway like that, and then entering or exiting on Highway 81? I'm troubled by that. Highway 81 is really busy at that corner. During drop-off time for children, when kids and people are going to school, it's an extremely busy corner, on both streets, Highway 81 and 3rd. It's hard for me to imagine this being safe.
I remember when this was originally denied. The main problem with this location is that you're only 150 feet back from the intersection of 3rd Avenue, and between 7:55 and 8:20 in the morning, it's stacked with high school kids and VOTEC kids going back and forth. This, I agree, it's an ingenious potential solution, and the only way that I would even fathom supporting something like this would be that it would only be an entrance in off of 3rd, and it would have to be a right out onto the highway.
That's what my idea was, but my driveway would be a one-way, and then they could exit out that way, and then.
But they'd have to take a right coming onto the highway.
Yeah.
I couldn't encourage a left-hand turn that close to a controlled intersection.
She asked me that I make signs for that specifically, go to be a one-way, and then whatever requirements you got, she said she'd be willing to sign.
And how many children are you expecting that you want to watch?
Well, including my own, 12.
So you could have up to 22 trips a day, 11 cars a day dropping kids off if there's only one per family or what have you. That's a lot of cars coming through that makeshift driveway.
We were going to offer her to help her pave it or asphalt it. She showed me interest in asphalting the whole parking lot. So I told her also that if it was, we want to buy the house, if it was an agreement with you guys, then we would be willing to help pay for that.
I would be more inclined to support if you actually own the property where the garage is situated in, and then you own your other house. I would be more inclined to support that because, again, that's the private use of your property, and traffic flow off and onto your property is something that I think is more of a right to you. Using it and setting up a deal without having the person here and present to answer some of these questions makes it a little bit cumbersome for me right now. I'm sorry.
Sorry, that's okay. She wanted to come with me, but she owns Doug's Anchor Marine, and they got busy, and she couldn't make it.
No, I understand.
Yeah, there's a lot of things going on with this property that make it problematic, Heather. Starting with the reason that it was denied before, I don't think we've really solved that. And typically with home occupation, home use conditional use permits, it's based upon the property itself, not extrapolating it to if we get this agreement with this landowner, another agreement with the landowner, that type of thing. So I'm not so sure that we could even approve it, even taking everything else off the table without those agreements in place to ensure that actually would happen. I'm not sure that we could approve it even if the board was so inclined, but not even addressing all the other issues with the property. It's unfortunate. I understand you're trying to get a home-based business, and appreciate that. Seems like there's some issues there that stand in the way of that.
From a staff engineering perspective, I guess we're hearing this. It wasn't part of the original proposal, so we're hearing this for the first time. I know some of you are as well. From an engineering perspective, I guess maybe we would be looking for some insight.
This is a unique spot. There's no on-street parking as mentioned, and that creates the issue. And I've been mulling over since hearing the drive-through aspect there. That's a DOT highway. I'm not sure that they would want that much traffic that close to the intersection, but I cannot speak for the DOT. I'm just trying to think of.
That's why I think if you were to allow it, you could not allow for a left-hand turn there.
Well, and I don't know if you could actually regulate that as
Yeah.
a homeowner. I think that it's a driveway technically, so they're not going to be able to regulate right in, right out.
And
right
the
out.
other question becomes from an access standpoint onto the state highway. I think we're talking basically a change of use, which would need some sort of DOT board approval, I would think, from an access perspective, because the access is changing from the intended use of a single, multiple family dwelling to a business associated with it. I might be wrong, but that's normally how it works in the county.
I would assume that would be the case, but I guess I've never encountered this yet.
Heather, do you have anything else to add or share? Any other questions for Heather?
I guess I just have a thought. Have you talked to your neighbors to the west at all?
Yes.
And how would they feel about maybe coming up with an access easement or doing the same thing but turning the L the other way?
Only reason is because our backyard's in between our property and theirs. So this way, the parking lot that they're building is adjacent to our driveway and our garage. So it's direct connection. All we would have to do is lay down gravel or dirt or make a pathway and signs. The other way, we would have, it went through the yard. It just isn't as easy, I guess.
Right.
And you lease or rent this property? You don't own. You don't own this property.
We are going to purchase it.
In process of purchasing.
My boyfriend's mother owns it, and he
Okay.
grew up there. They've owned it for 30-plus years.
I have one thought. Would the board have an appetite for tabling this situation and having her come back with actual documents?
Somebody could certainly promote that if they would choose. I'm not sure that would change my mind, even if my opinion, I guess I would say, even if those documents were in hand for all the other traffic flow reasons and parking and everything else we've talked about, that still are present, even if we had the documents in place that alleviated the unknowns of the ingress and egress with the neighbor's property.
Yeah. Where I would be at with that is that if somebody wanted to take a time out to talk to the Department of Transportation to talk about excess traffic coming onto that Highway 81, I would be more inclined and I'd feel better supporting an approval or a denial based upon that opinion of what the DOT says, because we're talking about coming onto a road that's not technically the city's. And so if it would be a matter of deferring this for 2 weeks, so that somebody could talk to, or 4 weeks, excuse me, so somebody could talk to the DOT and we get a letter stating what their opinion would be, I think that would make us all feel a lot more comfortable. I'm a little bit trying to understand 8 cars and then another 22 cars a day going through that area. I think it might be great initially, but what happens when the house on the corner, people start coming off the edge of your driveway and start tearing up their yard, and that's the one thing I think we could potentially have a problem with from a code enforcement standpoint. But I would make a motion to table this, or not table, postpone the decision for until the second meeting in July, second Thursday. Was it, Kenny, what day are we meeting in July? What day in July are we meeting?
Is it the 19th?
I would make a, yeah.
And then I would like to also have you talk to the people on the corner, their house where they're owner occupied, and that they're fine with all these cars going.
I talked to 'em. They are.
Yeah, I know, but could you get something like in writing saying,
Sure.
yep, we're fine with that?
Yep.
Because, and then also, this is just me thinking, this is going to be a permanent easement, so these people that own these apartment houses are fine that that's going to go with the property when they sell it, that they know this is always going to be there. Okay?
Go ahead.
I guess, and just from owning rentals myself, and you start dictating where they're going to park, and this car is going to park here, and this one's going to park there, and they have company. They have no place for visitors. I'm just really concerned, and I don't want to see it become more of a heartache for you that down the road it's going to be like herding cats to assign places for these people to park. And then when they have their parents or somebody's moving and they've got their trucks parked in the driveway and you're trying to get kids in and out of there, and pretty soon they're going to, we're nature of the beast, we're going to, well, I want to go down to Dempsey's, so I'm going to, come up your driveway the wrong way. You're not going to keep people from doing that. And especially, I'm not blaming Botech kids. If I'm in a hurry, I'm going to go the other way too. So I really feel for you, and I just don't know that this idea of that parking there, and if you're going to go through the steps of doing that, I think I'd like to see that parking lot actually drawn out. And if it's not going to be hard surface, I don't know how you're going to keep cars in spots. You can't paint lines on gravel. So you're never going to have those assigned spots that you're envisioning unless it is hard surfaced. And then, apartment 1, 2, 3 each have their sign in front of their spot. It's ideal to do that, but you're talking a lot of.
Who's going to enforce that?
Yeah, and then you've got better things to do. You got kids to take care of, as to be saying you can't park there. I got people coming through, and I thought you did an excellent job. Like Diana said, your presentation is awesome, and I hope that you can make this work. I just don't know that this is the spot to do it. Sorry.
Thank you. No, it's fine.
Why don't you ask if I may?
Right. Anything else to share? Thank you for your time.
I have one thing. If this were to be, after talking with the DOT and getting permission, I'd maybe suggest an access agreement to perpetual. Otherwise, if that ever changed hands, then there would be all sorts of other issues if they didn't want to allow access across there.
I have one more thought too with why I brought up the west property owners is because to avoid 81 completely, or any collector route for that matter, you could potentially get just like a walking access easement with those two on the back of the properties, and then have drop off to the west, whatever that street is. My eyes are failing me.
Fourth
Or
5th,
and then
third,
you could,
3rd Street.
Oh, okay, third.
I could do that.
Yeah, and but that neighbor there on the corner would have to be aware that there would be drop off. There would be more cars coming by, but because it's not a collector, then
Okay.
that.
I would be more supportive of that idea than actually dump. That's a very good idea, Brandy. And whether you get an access easement to walk across the people's backyard, or if you just have to push the kids, carry the kids half a block to get drop off, that's going to be an issue for your parents that you're taking care of, their children, that you can't just stop off at the house and drop off. But if they understand that you have to park here and walk around the corner to my house, that is what it is.
I could have it in my agreement, like when they enroll their children.
Yep.
Okay.
I would be more supportive of that idea, and allowing for you to act. The drop off could be very much even close to that corner on 4th, and people are then going to have to come out, and I'd rather do that than at an uncontrolled access point coming out onto 212. I'd rather get you to an intersection.
Okay.
I would support that.
Thank you for your time. Is there anyone else here to speak on behalf or against this application? You're excused.
Sorry,
Thank you.
I buy the donuts.
Did you make a motion?
Not yet. We're waiting.
So no one else here to speak before on behalf or against this?
Then I'd like to make a motion. I would like to make a motion to postpone this matter to the July, Kenny? 19th meeting, in order to give the applicant an opportunity to look at alternate ways of access to her property. I would suggest a conversation with DOT on the Highway 81 access point. If that is not a doable thing for them, then I would encourage her to explore possibly a walking path on the south side of her property for people to drop off their children, or that the drop-off, parking for the drop-off would occur on 3rd Street south of 3rd Avenue. And that would have to be part of the agreement that she makes with her parents.
Have a motion to postpone this issue to the July 19th meeting. Any second? Second?
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Ford. All in favor, say aye.
Discussion.
Aye. Opposed?
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Postpone. Next item is Brian and Cassandra Verilek, number 18078.
Okay. The applicants seek approval to operate service businesses, bicycle repair, and nutrition counseling at their single-family dwelling property located in the R1 Single Family Residential District per 21-14-035. The staff finds that home occupations is a listed conditional use for the R1 Single Family Residential District per 21-14-035. In that they can comply with home occupations in accordance with 2170. Home occupation, the definition is any occupation which is clearly secondary to the main use of the premises as a dwelling and does not change the character thereof or have any exterior evidence of such secondary use other than a non-illuminated sign not exceeding 400 square inches in area. This occupation shall be carried on or conducted only by members of a family residing in the dwelling. The applicant submitted a site plan, written request, and floor plan which reflects compliance or non-compliance with the following terms of the ordinance. I've mentioned Chapter 2170, Home Occupations and Standards. The Verileks propose to utilize approximately 697 square feet or 20% of their 3,476 square foot single-family dwelling for their service businesses. They have signed assurance to comply with Chapter 2170. No signage is proposed at this time. Chapter 2163, off-street parking and loading standards. To be counted as a legal off-street parking space, it must meet the minimum size and location standards and allow the exit of a vehicle without moving another vehicle. A minimum of 2 off-street parking spaces are required just for the single-family dwelling, and this board may require more as a condition of secondary uses such as home occupations. Outside storage and display requirements, according to Chapter 2165. In this case, 217002, that section supersedes for the secondary use because, according to home occupation standards, no outdoor storage of equipment or materials used in the home occupation shall be permitted, and no public display of goods shall be allowed on the premises except inside the principal building. Chapter 2173, landscape and lighting standards. The minimum tree requirement is 1 per 50 foot of frontage, and there is 1 tree in the front yard, but not on the boulevard. There is not sidewalk in the area. This board must determine if the request shows satisfactory provision and arrangement concerning Chapter 2170 Home Occupations and Standards, 210202 2B7A through H, specific rules governing individual conditional uses, and Chapters 2163, 65, and 73 as described above. If generally endorsed, this board may consider conditions of approval such as fulfillment of any or all lacking boulevard infrastructure requirements, like the sidewalk, additional parking spaces, and or any other conditions deemed appropriate for secondary uses.
All right, thank you. Is one of the unique aspects of this application that the variance is actually for 2 businesses?
The conditional use request is for 2 businesses, the bicycle repair and nutrition consulting, which would be limited, but I can have the homeowner explain.
There's nothing in the regulations that prevent from having multiple home occupations?
Not yet.
Okay. That's one of the things that's being considered, evidently.
Considered.
Yeah. Is there anyone here to speak on behalf of this application?
Mr. Chairman, I should recuse myself from this way.
No.
I should recuse myself from this as the applicants are personal friends.
All right, so noted. Go ahead. Introduce yourself, please.
I'm Cassandra Varlick. For the bicycle repair shop, we're looking at maybe 2 to the max, maybe 8 customers per week. It's just a part-time. We have like a shop behind our garage, and we just looked at it as an opportunity for a little extra income for my husband. And it would be pretty much appointment only. We don't have time to have it open, all the time. So, there wouldn't be noise really associated with it since it's bicycles. We're not talking motors. There's 2 spots in the driveway for parking, and then I would say there's probably up to 3 parking spots in front of our house. But like I said, it would be more of an appointment only, so I would only expect 1 customer at a time. We don't also have the room to store their bicycles at our place, so it would only be up to maybe 2 at a time. And we're not really going to publicize big on it, so it's going to be more of like friends, word of mouth type.
So you just plan on having customers arrive and having the repairs done on the spot? And
No, they would drop their bicycle
They
off.
would drop their bike.
But we
So
don't
you
have
would-
room for more than 2 in that
All
shop
right.
area, so we wouldn't want that, I mean, we don't want 10 people coming at one time.
But you are going to have hours, evidently, according to your application here, 3 to 7.
Well, I was asking if it can be 3 to 7 or if you can do it just appointment only. I mean, can you set your business where it is appointment, like by appointment only?
That would be your choice.
Yeah, because I mean, I would want to do just appointment only because my husband has to go and pick up children during the school year from school, and he gets home at 3, and then you got to leave at 3:20 to go get kids.
So are you saying it would definitely be appointment
Yes,
only? or
I would
just
rather just appointment
kind of?
only. No, appointment only.
Definitely.
Yes, I didn't know if we had to have set hours or if we. Oh no, appointment only then.
We just want to know what
No,
it is
we
you're
would prefer
presenting.
appointment only then. Yes,
All right.
appointment only.
Any questions from the board?
And what's the nutrition portion of it?
That would just be like I got into some like whole food, plant-based diet type stuff, and it would just be more of not even really counseling, online counseling, but if people wanted help, and as far as like how do you get started going that lifestyle, give them, tell them some resources that they can look into, that kind of stuff. And I even put in my plan that it might be just a free service, but I was told that even if it's a free service, it's still considered a business, so you have to be.
You're not selling product
No,
or
no.
You're going to be mainly online and
Yep.
going to the grocery store
Yeah,
and
if people are like, well,
helping
where do
them
you
out.
find this, or what is it that I'm supposed to buy? Maybe I'd go with them to Hy-Vee and show them what it is that they need, or because I know I get confused when I go there. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about, especially when it's some odd type of ingredient that you don't hear of.
So you wouldn't anticipate group activities at your home
No.
involving the nutrition portion of it?
Any other questions for Cassandra? Anything else for the board?
Yes. I have one more comment that I forgot. There was an adjacent landowner that called and strongly opposes the granting of allowing this business in her neighborhood.
But immediately adjacent?
Was there any?
I took the call, and it wasn't per se this particular business. She just didn't want any business, home occupation coming into her neighborhood. She said neighborhoods should be neighborhoods and business should be business. So that was the gist of what it was. It wasn't anything against this particular, whatever it was just businesses in general.
All right, thank you. Were you going to say something? Anyone else to speak here on behalf or against? Please come to the microphone and state your name, please.
My name is Dorothy Syrie, and I live directly across the street. And I got a certified letter about going into business across the street. And that is kind of what upset me the most, that they couldn't come across and visit with them, you know. And no one else in the neighborhood received a letter that I know of. And I do have a letter from my next door neighbor that is against having any type of business. So it's not, Verelicks are very good neighbors, very good. But having a bicycle shop across the street, they have 2 vehicles, they're quite large, and that's all they have room for on their driveway. There's no place for storage except in the garage, which is not a good thing. And it's close to the park, we're close to school. I just don't think that a residential area should have any type of business.
There's actually a storage behind the garage.
If you're gonna speak, ma'am, you need to come up so that we can get you on the microphone.
And just for your knowledge, that's the same person that I spoke with. So it's not an additional one.
Okay.
This is the one I spoke with.
No,
Well, the vehicles would be parked in the garage.
so
I mean, then you'd
everything
still
will
have
be
driveway.
outside.
No, there's, I don't know if I can I just show you on there? So here's the garage, and then right here is a separate room built on behind that. That's where the repair shop would be. And there's actually access back here, so people could actually walk around and come from the back as well, or through the garage.
Is there a walk-through garage door?
Yes, right here.
Is there a sidewalk on that side of the garage that you're asking them to perhaps walk around?
No.
We're looking into trying to get estimates for whether to be doing like pavers or something.
So there is nothing?
Nothing.
Just grass now or whatever? All right.
But otherwise, they could just walk through the garage, and then there's a, here's the door, and then you've got your garage doors. And then there's doors.
Mr. Chair, I have to excuse myself. I'm sorry.
Ma'am,
You can read this to them from my neighbor.
Mrs. Serling,
You know,
I have a
this is
question for her.
my letter, and I have another neighbor here.
Siri, Mrs. Siri, I have a question for you. Now that I'll use Magazine over here. Now that you know that she is thinking appointment only, does that ease your mind on that at all?
No.
It does not.
No, I don't feel that a residential area, and it's nice and quiet and peaceful, and we have very good neighbors, and I just don't think that a business should be in residential. I think it should be uptown. The Needleworks people, they live in the same neighborhood. They have their business uptown. Now, this could start, well, to me, it's like opening up a can of worms. One business starts in a residential, and it could move further. And I just don't feel that Watertown has enough places uptown for lease or buy or rent for a business. And when you start with bicycles, how in the world can you control the time of day that you're going to be there to take care of them? And there's no place for parking except I own 200 feet property. It's like 2.5 lots across the street. And I just don't feel, and there's no sidewalks. And we have a lot of traffic in the summertime with kids over in the park playing ball. A lot of parents are there. I just don't feel that a bicycle shop, it should be uptown.
Thank you for those comments. You are aware that home occupation is fairly common in, throughout Watertown. This is not an
I
exception.
do. But when you have bicycle parks, where do you put them? And if you're only going to allow 2 bicycles,
There's no outside storage allowed with home occupation. And make sure I'm going to make that clear as well. That is to say, it is the homeowner's responsibility to keep all the bicycles that they're working on and all the parts and everything else inside of their home, in the garage or wherever they choose, but it cannot be left out on the in public view.
well, that's what, it can start out to be that way, but what is it going to lead into later on?
Well, that's enforced, by the city.
So, but Dudley Lane Block, they live to the south side of me. They are also against it, and he's written a letter suggesting that he doesn't approve of it. And another neighbor that lives across the street, is also here, and she would like to say what she thinks.
Sure.
But there's three of us that
Okay.
really aren't opposed to it.
Sure. Please come up to the microphone.
I'm Gloria Ristvet, and I'll try not to repeat some of the things that Mrs. Syrie said, but I just love our Sunrise area. I moved there 20 years ago, and it's probably one of the best kept secrets in Watertown, I think. It's very family friendly, and I don't want to jeopardize this by having a business and, you know, more cars and that kind of thing. Strangers to the areas cause parking issues. I'm not sure about it lowering my property values, but you know, I'm getting to, in fact, I'm over retirement age, but someday I'll want to sell my property, and you know, I just don't want any issues involved with that. And possibly might start a trend in that area. Maybe other people want to bring businesses in too, which you know, could possibly happen. Could cause safety issues for our children also, as Dorothy said. We have a lot of traffic with children and ball games and practices across the street there at Harper Park, and that is kind of an issue too. And again, yeah, there are some places downtown, so that's the way I feel too. I just don't know what's going to happen, and I love our area, and I just hate to have any more traffic. The other neighbor that's against it too, we can talk in the middle of the street, you know, sometimes, and we do, and not have anybody, you know, coming by at all. It's just so safe. And then I also have a 4-year-old granddaughter in town that comes over and plays, and I would just hate to see anything happen, you know, with her too. So, and dogs and, you know, everything else. So that's the way I feel. I would like to keep the character of our neighborhood the way it is, and not get into anything that might jeopardize that. So, any questions or anything?
My only comment would be, I understand everything that you're saying. The decision the board needs to make is this a reasonable use of a home occupation business, and if they're complying with all the rules and regulations of home occupation, the fact that neighbors don't necessarily, you know, like the idea does not necessarily make it a non-permittable use. I'm not saying that in terms of, you know, for or against the application. I'm just saying that while it's a factor, well, certainly the board can consider that. It's only one of the elements, I guess I would say, with respect to the board's decision. But certainly valid points, and I appreciate you sharing that.
Can I say, I want it to keep a very minimum business, and I myself have 2 children. I have a 7-year-old and an almost 2-year-old. So if I felt at all that it was an unsafe business to be coming in, I would not allow it. I'm the one that will call the cops because I see people around the stop sign frequently.
All right, thank you. Any questions for?
I had one other thing that.
Okay, you're gonna have to come to the microphone. We can't hear you back there.
I had one other thing that I would just like to add. I have a grandson, and he doesn't live in Watertown, but he was 10 years old, and he was hit by a driver on his bicycle. He now has a glass eye. So it isn't just my properties or anything else I'm worried about. It's children riding their bicycles after they are already fixed, trying it out on the street. I just, by the park and close to the schools, I just don't see having a lot of traffic in our area. It's very nice now and quiet. So there's another reason why, safety reasons. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion on the board or from the board or any questions?
She said there's another man.
Oh, somebody else? Oh, I'm sorry. Come on up.
Dale McElhaney. I'm landowner. Our home is immediately adjacently to the north of the home in question. And I agree with the two previous ladies in that we've got the best kept secret going around because we just don't have any traffic there. Just yesterday morning I was backing out as I do every morning, and I think, I've lived here 20 years now, or 22 years, and I almost never even look to see if anything's coming because nothing's coming. And it'd be nice to keep that, I suppose. But life goes on for others as well. And I can only say that my daughter was just over babysitting the cats at Cassandra and Brian's place, and she said, wasn't being nosy, but she said, I did see the work area. This would be I think she's talking about the area on the back of the garage. She said, it's very well done. Brian and Cassandra, I don't know anybody else that puts out Christmas lights and Thanksgiving lights and Easter lights. They keep a neat place. They're great neighbors, as are the two ladies that spoke. We do have the best kept secret, but I certainly respect the fact that life goes on. I respect the fact that they came in and applied for an application instead of just did it. There's carpenters all over town that they've got a truck with ladders on the back of it and parked in the driveway and coming and going, and some of their customers come and go, and so I just want to support them, and I'm not telling you what way you should vote, but I know it. I thought about the can of worms thing too, but the next party is going to have to come here and convince you folks that it's the thing to do, and you can certainly turn them down. So thank you for your time. Unless you have any questions. That sidewalk that could be built in question to go around the back, it would be towards my property, but it certainly wouldn't interfere with anything.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And there was another letter from somebody else altogether. Is that correct? Would you mind reading that quick?
Regarding conditional use request by Brian and Cassandra Verlick for their property at 30 Sunrise Drive for a home-based business of bicycle repair and nutrition consulting business. Elaine, I, and our children live just diagonally across the street from the subject property at 35 Sunrise Drive. While we have had nothing but positive experiences with the Verilecks and strongly support the need for a bicycle repair service in Watertown, we are opposed to such a business at their residence. Officially zoned and in practice, the subject Sunrise Drive neighborhood is firmly established and characterized as peaceful and quiet residential. Families purchase and reside here for these characteristics with the zoning assurances that it will remain residential and not convert to a commercial venue. The business plan provided by the Verilecks in proposing the conditional use permit in itself does not purport alarm. However, once the line is crossed from residential to commercial, enforcement of evolving and enhanced commercial uses conflicts in a residential neighborhood becomes extremely subjective at the expense of the established residential use. We applaud the Verilecks for their entrepreneurship spirit and likely would patronize their bicycle service at a commercial location. To be clear, our opposition is to the location, not the Verilecks nor the proposed enterprise.
Was it signed then, or?
Yes, Douglas and Elaine Block.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any questions for anybody else here to speak on behalf, for or against? Any questions for Jill? Any discussion among the board? Joe, I have a question for you. If the board so chose, could we vote on the two different businesses, separate votes?
Yes.
The bicycle repair and the nutrition? Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other comments?
Do we need to make a motion first and then discuss, or?
Yeah, we'll close the public hearing. Thank you. And do we make a motion and then discuss, or okay? So, were you gonna?
Do you want to make the motion?
So again, if you so choose, you could make a motion for
Just one?
one,
Okay.
yes, or the other, or both.
Okay, I would like to make a motion to approve for the nutrition business for home occupancy.
I'll second.
Okay. Let's do a roll call vote on these.
Letsky?
Yes.
Dargis Johnson?
Yes.
Stein?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Ford?
Yes.
Olson? Oh, abstain. Motion passes.
All right.
Can I just add one, like, 2 cents in with that though? For the,
You want to come up?
for the
Speak into
bicycle repair, we don't even anticipate more than one customer a day. That's where I'm like, I don't foresee the traffic as they're anticipating. I don't foresee that. And if it ever were to get where I could see a potential of my husband ever quitting, we would move it to a commercial site. But when you're starting out thinking maybe you're gonna have 2 customers a week, you can't afford to have a place uptown.
All right, thank you. All right, so at this point, then, we'd be looking for a motion to approve the bicycle repair conditional use.
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second for the bicycle repair?
I'll second that.
Have a second. Roll call.
Yeah.
Sorry. Thought we were done talking. Talk amongst yourselves.
The one thing, the 3 people that really are the neighbors with me was the 2 ladies and Mr. McElhaney. You know, how many other people up there in the neighborhood have been talking about this? You know, is my main question.
I think the public hearing is closed
Yeah,
now, so.
yeah, so that was my main question, is how many other people just go, well, you know, it's just a couple of bites a week.
Right, and I'm with the couple of bikes a week. I see her point that, you know, if it's an appointment, they're dropping it off, you know. I understand the quietness of that neighborhood. I don't know if we can put something in this that, you know, the neighbors have the right that if it's becomes a problem, if traffic becomes, you know, noticeably busier, that, you know, they can have the code enforcer come and at that point, you know, you guys would have to get a commercial site. But I don't know, you know, their idea of increased traffic would be 1 car. So, you know, it would be, you know.
Yeah, I don't know how you.
I don't know how we
yeah,
police
I don't
that
know.
for them.
I think that is so ambiguous. I don't know how you quantify that, or.
See, that's what going to be my next question is, what's the magic
Right.
number where you go from 1 or 2 bikes a week to 6 bikes a week? Well, now we can afford a, you know,
Right. I
a
don't
commercial
know.
building.
I just defer to Mr. Stein's comment about the regulations and the requirements and, you know, a black and white comparison. These are the requirements, and do you meet them? And as Mr. McElhaney said, you know, life goes on. Things change. Things change for all of us.
You have to remember this is an R1, the most restrictive type
True.
zoning.
True, it is. However, they appear to meet unless, except for the sidewalk and the tree, you know, a sidewalk on the.
North side of the house.
No, a sidewalk, a boulevard sidewalk. There's not that, or another tree. They don't meet those requirements.
Yeah, but there's no sidewalk up there.
On the back side of it, there is. You see on the back side of it, there's sidewalk on the back side. No, left. There, right there. There's sidewalk right along there. So there is.
That's a street.
That's across the backyard. It's not across the street. It's in the backyard. No, I know, I'm just saying there is sidewalk in the area, so,
Oh, I get what you mean.
right, so there is some if we chose to add that to it.
Yes.
But other than those things, I think they meet the requirements of,
Except for like what she was saying, Mrs. Verlicht was saying, do your own paver sidewalk around the back of the driveway. You know, around the garage, to the back of the garage. Do a sidewalk like that.
Well, it's definitely a tough call. I can definitely see both sides. It does meet the requirements. Again, if the motion was made to approve, you could include the conditional put the tree in to meet that requirement, for example, and sidewalk, I guess, if you so chose. But then again, on the other hand, how much weight does the board put in what seems to be a fairly overwhelming number of neighbors that are objecting to this variance?
Ken, what's the rule of thumb on, I mean, the sidewalk thing when there's a kind of, we'd create an island there, if you will. There's
At best, we just request a waiver of right to protest because we really don't want a standalone of one house putting in a sidewalk. We just, with the waiver of right to protest, if they ever go through there, then yes, you have to do it at the same time as everybody else. But no, we wouldn't. Typically, I mean, not saying you guys can't, but we generally wouldn't just put a single sidewalk in the front.
All right, anything else? All right. Entertain a motion to approve the bicycle repair shop with any conditions applied to it.
With the conditional use, or the waiver of right to protest for the sidewalk and the boulevard tree. Make that part of the...
Second? Okay. Do a roll call on this one.
Waletsky?
Yes.
Jarvis Johnson?
Yes.
Stein?
No.
Hanson?
Yes.
Ford?
yes.
Olson abstains. We have 4 votes of 5. I believe that passes.
Passed. Thank you. Public comment section of the meeting. Anybody that signed up to make any public comments? Doesn't look like it. Jill, do we have any old business?
Nope.
All righty. Then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
For a second favor, say aye. Opposed? Thank you. We're adjourned. Alrighty, let's go ahead and get started. I'd like to call the June 7th, 2018 Planning Commission meeting to order. Roll call.
Dargis Johnson,
Here.
Stein,
Here.
Hanson,
Here.
Olson,
Here.
and Dolly, Colhane, and Kays are absent, and we have a quorum.
All right. I'd like to start by inviting any public comment for later in the meeting. If you have anything that you would like to address with the board toward the end of the meeting, please sign up and we'll address your concerns later. Meanwhile, I'd like to get approval of the agenda for today. Motion by Dargis Johnson, second.
Second.
Second by Olson. All in favor?
Aye.
Approved. Next is approval of minutes from the May 24th meeting. Actually, I have one comment on that, kind of in the middle of it, where it says Kay's made a motion to postpone to June 24th. Actually, I believe that's June 21st. Anyway, June 24th is like a Saturday, so it's, you know.
Yeah, we're meeting on a Saturday.
Seriously.
That's my bad. It is June
Yeah.
21st.
Anything to admit that, to avoid having to admit there was a mistake, you guys will meet on a Saturday before that, huh? Nice, all right.
No Saturday meetings, just to clarify.
All right.
I'll fix that.
That was the only thing I noticed. Other than that, motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Motion by Olson, second. Second. Hanson. Approved. Or all in favor, say aye. Aye. Approved. Next item is rezone of lots 15 through 18, et cetera, et cetera. Randy?
Thank you, Mark. This is a rezone request from Jamie Andrews, who's the acting agent for J&J Land Sales. Currently, the properties are zoned R1, which is single-family residential, and he is proposing or petitioning to rezone to R2, which is single-family attached residential district. And I guess all of the lots, they meet the minimum requirements. This rezone would create a transition zone between the R3, which is multifamily residential that is along 2nd Street, and it would create a buffer between the R1 by stepping it to R2. So we go R3, R2, R1. And currently there are no properties that are adjacent to these proposed rezone lots that would have bought their lot with the intent, with the idea that they were going to have R1 in their backyard still, that they would also have single family. City staff supports Plan Commission recommending resolution number 2821 or 2018-21 as presented to the City Council.
All right, thank you. And the way that this is going to play out then, with the R3, the R2 in that proposed area actually would be a good stepping stone to what in fact will remain as R1.
Mm-hmm.
And are there other things that you're anticipating going to come before the committee here that's going to be further rezoning or?
Nothing that I'm anticipating. Just I think that there was interest in these lots to develop them with duplex. There is also other R2 areas or zoning districts within the area. And then, like I said, there's the R3 and that's a nice buffer zone because 2nd Street is a collector so that we have transition.
All right. No issues with lot sizes or setbacks and street widths and all that jazz?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. They're all compliant.
All right.
Oversized.
Okay. Any questions for Brandy? Ready for a vote then, or?
We'll do you want to open it,
Oh.
the public hearing?
Yeah. Open a public hearing. Anybody here to speak before the board, for or against this motion? See nobody, now we're ready for a vote. Okay,
For a motion.
motion, yeah.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Dargis Johnson.
Second.
By Olson. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Do you want a roll call vote? I
No.
don't, okay. Sounds good. Okay. Oh, do you want to move us on to agenda number 5? Do you want to introduce it?
Right, okay. Item number 5 is draft resolution amending Title 21 by adding Chapter 21.15 R1A Single Family Residential District.
All right, thank you, Mark. So when I talked to you guys last meeting, I said that this was going to be, I was going to have the ordinance amendment in front of you, ready for action. But actually, when I was drafting it, I still had some questions that I wanted to discuss with you guys. So I'm presenting it as if it, as like it will look when it comes to you as an ordinance amendment. And we also do have a public hearing so we can get public input as well, because we are creating a new zoning district, so it'll be important to hear from community members. I'll get down to here. So right now, we're proposing that the minimum lot size, not width, would be 5,000 square feet. The minimum lot width would be 50 feet. The minimum side yard setback, last meeting we discussed having 6 feet on one side and 9 feet on the other. And then that we would have a 55% maximum lot coverage to alleviate drainage issues, and then also keep these homes within being affordable. And then also shared walls between lot lines would be allowable as long as each lot and home had sufficient 50-foot frontage. And then that these lots would have 9-foot side yard setbacks, as they could share a wall and then gain some space on the side yards. So some of the questions then that I would like to discuss and have answered before we bring the actual ordinance amendment in front of you would be, we've talked, should we have a 20-foot of contiguous curb frontage? And that idea is so then we have on-street parking with these being smaller lot widths. And then should driveway curb cuts be limited? And that was, we've had discussion where would we say that you can have, I think the last conversation was 18 or 20, that your driveway would only be able to be that wide at the curb cut to go onto the street. And that would also be for parking. And then our on-street parking. And then should one side yard setback be required to be at least 9 feet? We talked about that because so then people were able to access their backyard. And is 55% maximum lot coverage appropriate? So those are all just discussion points, and like I have in the recommendation, staff recommends no action but public hearing and discussion on the following questions and input from the Plan Commission and the public so that the ordinance amendment is able to have action taken at the June 21st, 2018 Plan Commission meeting.
All right, thank you. Could you give the pros and cons then of the various items here? For example, the 20 feet continuous curbing frontage. Why we would want to keep that, or why we'd want to change that?
So, and the mayor, do you want to come up here too? She'll have input with it. My question with that came when I was working on this perspective. So if we're having a 9-foot and a 6-foot side yard setback, then that only allows, and then if we need 20 feet of contiguous curb frontage, then that already cuts us down to, well, that adds up to 29. And I'm not going to be, I just feel like it limits what people will be able to do with the lot. But the pro of it would be that there would be on-street parking for at least one car.
The purpose of the public right-of-way.
Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am. You have to say your name.
Sarah Karen. Sorry.
Thank you.
I should remember to do that. part of the purpose of a public right-of-way is parking in a residential neighborhood, and it bothers me when I see gigantic driveways taking up the entire public right-of-way. It's essentially the private property owner taking away the public parking for their own use on their own property, because you can't block a driveway on the street. So there's really no reason that someone should have a wide driveway on a narrow lot. They can't put a wide garage on the narrow lot, or they won't be able to have a house. So it's the purpose of the zone is to provide less expensive lots so that people can build affordable houses. And I would presume these houses would be small, and they won't have huge garages, and that a minimal driveway width would be sufficient. And how do we decide what's sufficient or not? I personally am leaning toward even less than Brandy was saying for a driveway width. 12 feet is perfectly wide enough to get access to a garage. If you want wider than that, it's so that you can have a garage with extra berths and go straight in from the road. And that's a luxury. Maybe you should buy a bigger lot somewhere else. In this zone where we really want to limit the size so that it remains affordable, I think a lot of folks are only going to be able to have one car on their driveway, or they're going to be exceeding the maximum impervious surface anyway. So we want to make sure there's enough room to park on the street. The contiguous 20 feet is for one car. That's pretty short for a car, actually. A lot of cars are even longer than that, but that would be a bare minimum to provide enough room on the road for at least one car. So I suggested that we have at least 20 feet of contiguous parking area in case they have their driveway in the middle of the lot, and then there's two danglers on either side, neither of which is large enough for a car. And then the neighbor has, it could be, how do we decide if it's right or wrong? So I want to look at that. I'm thinking 12 feet is more of a, what we should allow for a driveway width. And then they can go wider as long as they leave at least 20 feet on the road. So if you have enough room to have an 18-foot wide driveway or a 20-foot wide driveway, and there's still 20 feet of contiguous space on the curb, then that would be okay. But if widening your driveway from 12 to 18 now means no one can park on the street, the answer should be no, because that you're taking away the public's right to use the street. And it might be somebody down the road that wants to park there. That's not just for the homeowner adjacent. The public right-of-way is for the public. So that's the reason for limiting curb cuts.
I think the mayor's suggestion is actually spot on for how we could handle that, but that was good.
Is the curb cut identified in the outline now, or
no? We would have to make a note. This zone is going to have more restrictions than our regular R1 zone. R1 zone has no limit to the impervious area. You can build a gigantic house and have everything impervious, and you won't be violating our code. It won't be very nice for the neighborhood, but you won't be violating our code. We want to make sure that we're leaving a nice neighborhood. We don't want it to turn into a sea of asphalt, because those are small lots. 5,000 square feet is pretty small.
Okay, so just to clarify, your position, Mayor, is a minimum of a 20-foot contiguous.
Oh, yes.
Minimum of 20-foot contiguous curb frontage and a 12-foot driveway cut.
Yes, and here's how I would phrase that. Control the width of driveway that's allowable in the zone. A maximum of 12 feet unless you can do wider and still maintain at least 20 feet. So we could write, that would be easier for us to write than to try and wrap those things in. So a maximum of 12 feet unless there's at least 20 feet of continuous curb available with a wider driveway.
And that would vary because the next house
Yes.
is where they position their driveway. Is that how you're going to get, I mean, otherwise you only have 50 feet anyway, Sarah.
Right.
So, I mean, is that,
Well, and if you had 50 feet and your driveway is all the way over to the end and
Right.
you do 25 feet, you still have 25 feet. But most of the time, the driveway isn't all the way over on the end unless you're a shared driveway, like with a shared wall. That's going to leave more space on the ends. But most other lots are going to have a setback from the garage, and then the driveway into the garage is a few more feet, so you end up being 8 to 10 feet away or more from the property line.
are we restricting garage size on these homes?
No, we're restricting the
Just-
maximum coverage.
So they could put a
So-
300 square foot house with a 3-stall garage if they
Right,
wanted
we're
to.
not gonna-
We don't care.
Right.
Oh, okay.
But the 55% is for a small lot. That's not very much.
Yeah,
area.
but I mean, I'm crazy enough to do that,
Right.
so I
Right,
want
so,
to.
and also, if they wanted a big house, they can go up. Put a couple stories, get more square footage, have a bigger garage, but
So-
you're not going to.
The footprint is the square footage
Yes.
that you're concerned about. I could
Yes.
go 3 stories high with a 3-stall garage, and you don't care.
Right, I don't care.
Okay.
We're not going to get into
And
that.
do you have since you're kind of thinking, I mean, I'm assuming they're going to want more living space than that, but so if you're thinking that if it does just have a 1-stall garage, what is your street width in this, Brandy? If you're thinking there's going to be a lot of on-street parking, is that changed at all in this?
The street width, we aren't talking about street width is definitely a conversation we're going to have on a different day. This, we're only talking about the lot and the private property requirements, not the public right-of-way requirements. So the curb cut is your access to your private property from the public street. And the trend has been wider and wider driveways so people can go straight in. They're wider than our streets. The driveways are wider than the streets. And I think that's excessive. I don't want to encourage that here. This is meant to have small houses that are affordable. Concrete's expensive, and we don't want to promote lots of extra concrete.
With regard to the setbacks, I've been contacted by at least one contractor that's concerned about the 9-foot setback, the 6 foot and the 9 foot, suggesting that both setbacks should be 6 feet. The rationale being that if someone, when they're building their house, and if they want to get to their backyard, I think that was one of the reasons for having the 9-foot setback, but that if that's important to someone when they're building their house, then they will they'll just accommodate that when they're building, but it does restrict building the building lot area if they have to have a 9-foot setback. What's your opinion on that?
I actually like the 9-foot thing so a vehicle can get in the back. And we have had some situations where houses don't have any access to their backyard, and then there's a problem for storage and for making changes. And the 9-foot is not huge, but it's really hard to even get a vehicle there. But you could physically do it. 6 feet, no, you're not going to get a vehicle in the back if you need one. And so you're going to have to rely on getting to the backyard. If work needs to be done back there for some reason, how do you physically get equipment back there with a 6-foot setback? That's a challenge. So I like it, but I mean, we have 6-foot setbacks on both sides in our other zones too. So I guess that would be up to you to decide. I kind of like the idea. And then also if we have a shared wall, and there's only one setback, it's going to be 9 feet, not 6. And I think that's written in there already, isn't it?
Kenny, remind me, So when we talk about the 9 and the 6 foot, does that include overhang or is that wall?
No, it's always taken to the footprint where it touches the ground.
It doesn't count the overhang. So I mean that's a good question, and it's debatable. You can have pros and cons on both sides of that, and for me it's not a deal breaker. But we originally proposed it as 6 feet, and someone brought that up about getting access to the back, because the R2A zone is where we have the 6 foot setbacks, and most of those lots have alleys because that's the old part of town. Those are narrow lots as well. But a lot of them have alleys, and people don't build alleys anymore. It's expensive. It doesn't lead to affordable housing, so we're probably not going to see alleys. Not that we would prohibit them, but it's a lot of extra expense, and people won't be able to have a shed that they can, build with equipment unless they build it before they build their house. So that's the thinking there, and it'll be up to you to decide. Another thing that wasn't in here that we did touch on briefly at the last meeting is what to do in a case of a cul-de-sac. Those typically don't have parking, on-street parking in front of them in any zone. And I think that's an issue that we should probably address when it's platted with the whole block and a restriction. But I think we should state it somehow. And I know you're not taking action this week, but just what do you think about that? I'm kind of thinking you'd count how many lots there are in a block that's being platted as an R1A, and if it has a cul-de-sac, they aren't going to have parking in front of them. So you would just take, if there's 15 lots, there'd have to be 15 contiguous step, pieces of 20 feet together, 15 increments in that block for 15 lots. That way you get the average of 1 per lot. So that means the straight lots are going to have more frontage because the cul-de-sac lots have less. But overall, the balance is there. We could address that in a comment if we have cul-de-sacs. But I know that question will come up sometime in the future. We hate cul-de-sacs, but developers like to put them in. And if we're going to put them in, let's give ourselves some cushion on making it right for the people who live there eventually. Just something else to consider. And the 55% maximum lot coverage, I don't know if you've had a chance to think about that, but we thought about it quite a bit, and we actually started lower than that in the 40s. And I hate to go up that high, but we expanded it because of the need for garages and driveways, and then having a place to park next to your garage. If we don't want these small lots to be cluttered with everybody's junk because the lot is so small they can't have a garage, or the lot is so small they don't have enough room for a big enough garage, and then everything's all over the yard. Somebody else brought that comment up at another time, so just want to mention that.
And this graphic here shows what you could have, and this is a 2-stall garage, 24-foot driveway, and then an extra 9-foot bonus parking spot to the side on the side yard, and this meets 55%. And I can't remember that. I mean, the house is built out to the extent of the setbacks too, and I think that came to like 1,700 square feet. And then the patio is just a little 10 by 10. But what a basic layout might look like, it would be attainable.
We're trying to do real life situations, and like small houses, you still have enough room for a practical house, and we were really cutting it with a 45% maximum. Another thing to think about that I would like your input on is the corner lot requirement for square footage. We just had, in all of our zones, we just add another 1,000 feet. But if you think about it, if you have a 50 by 100 foot lot, that corner lot has 25 feet of setback instead of 6. That's 19 extra feet of setback that you can't build on. So if we wanted to make it a little bit bigger, we might want to go 19 by 100 because that's really going to make it the same buildable area. 1,900 extra square feet on a 50 by 100 foot corner lot, and instead of 1,000. So that would mean a minimum lot size on a corner lot of 6,900 instead of 6,000. So doing 6,900 would give you the exact same buildable area as any internal lot. Otherwise, the corner lots, you're going to be getting variance requests because they don't have enough room. There's not enough buildable area.
I like that.
If you have questions, I'll stay here. Otherwise, you should open the public hearing because some people are here from the committee that's been looking at this and they might want to make a comment.
Any questions for Sarah?
I guess I'm getting the cart in front of the horse. But part of my concern is, so we do this initially as a low-cost development, affordable housing. My concern is what happens when the second or third owner is in that home, and now, again, we want to change that. I mean, I guess I know the idea is that this is kind of a hard, fast rule, and we're not going to have variances. I just don't know how that's enforced on the second or third owner, or if someone builds a garage on the night and weekend. Are we prepared to enforce that?
That varies from time to time. The staff enforces the ordinances today, and they would not hear anything otherwise from me as long as I'm mayor. We enforce our ordinances, or if they're not enforceable, we change them. Or if we don't like them, we change them. We don't just look the other way and pretend we don't notice. If someone's violating an ordinance, we will address it. Variances should be very, very carefully granted, and there should be some conditions that make this unique in a way that other lots in the district aren't before you would grant a variance. So I can't explain why variance has been passed before, but really you have criteria for a variance. There should be a hardship. You should make note of it, and then it's a unique situation. So I don't see those as issues at all. This is unique and different from the other zones that we have with that maximum coverage. The other zones don't have that requirement, so you can put a gigantic house on a lot and cover the whole thing, and we have nothing in our code to prevent that. These are small lots, and they have a maximum coverage, so they're going to be small buildings. Small buildings, no matter how fancy, are more affordable than large buildings of the same quality. So this does drive affordable housing.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Are we gonna, or can we try to control that? I mean, every time we do one of these small lot developments and we set up, okay, you got 65-foot lots, and all of a sudden you go out and buy it, and then you're buying 5 feet, 10 feet of the next lot. Now they got a 75-foot lot, and then it keeps diminishing, and all the way down the line, they're all
We can't
half of this lot
control
and half
that,
of that
but
lot.
one thing that we can control is that we're writing right into it the maximum coverage. So no matter how big you get, you're not going to have more concrete than 55%. The coverage is the unique thing about this zone that keeps a person from doing that. But we aren't giving anybody a break in any way to do this kind. So it's not like we're giving somebody an end run around. If someone chooses to zone something R1A, they are choosing that limitation on the size of the building, the size of the coverage of the lot. Otherwise, just go a little bit bigger and call it R1, and then you can build as big of a house as you want.
Or a small.
Or a small, of
Well-
course. But we're talking about the opposite.
Okay,
how
just
it would-
because I'm being devil's advocate here, and I can't say no right now. What are you is there any need to look at that? I have a small 300 square foot house, and I have this huge garage. Yeah, I got my 18-foot driveway coming into it, but I'm just saying, is there any need to protect us that we aren't going to have that situation, or don't we really care? And I've got this small little house, and then I've got this 3-story. I mean, kind of like the thing in Sioux Falls where they, their ordinances were too high.
That's gone today.
Yeah. Do we need to set anything up for that? I mean, or do we just, is it not a big deal? Do we want neighbors coming up saying, well, they put this skyscraper next to my house?
Are you talking about the garage, or are you talking about the house?
And
Either.
either or. I mean, I don't,
Same
I like,
thing. Do you
I
want-
like 3-story houses. I think they're beautiful.
Do you want a
but
3-story house on a 50-foot lot?
That's all I'm saying, is do we need to look at that before we're saying, oh, we should have thought of that? That's all.
Well, if I guess we could go there, but in general, it's more expensive to build a 2-story house. And so if you're, it's not going to necessarily be affordable. And you have more freedom in an R1 zone than you will have in an R1A zone. So I think this is naturally going to lead people who want to do that to a different zone.
Yeah, because I think the market's going to dictate how much this is utilized, and I think we're creating it because we've addressed that there's a need for it. So hopefully developers and builders see that as well.
And I guess we could, if you wanted to try and build that into the regulation,
Well,
we could.
the only reason I see that is the kind of like the Northridge situation, kind of where they went from, that's supposed to be affordable housing to some extent, and now we added third stalls to those, and now they're not affordable. You know what I mean?
Northridge made themselves affordable by cheaper roads, not cheaper lots. The city gave them cheaper roads, said you can build a less
But why? What's going to
road.
stop me, Sarah? Why wouldn't I go build a house there that I can afford a 3-story house? So I'm going to
You
go
could.
there.
You could,
and then
but
my
it doesn't
neighbors
change the road standards. We're
no,
not
no. But
suggesting.
I'm saying, but then my neighbor's mad because I'm overshadowing their home. I might just be conservative, and I will buy that cheaper lot and live in that neighborhood because
We can limit
Yeah,
the maximum
that's
height.
my
Good.
only.
Yeah.
Because in R1, it's 35 feet is the maximum that you can build a house. So we could say only
25 feet.
I mean, what do you guys feel? I mean, am I just opening a can of worms that's not needed to be opened, or, I don't know. Because I just see it, then all of a sudden, my house that's 3-story is, okay, I'm just going to use simple numbers. The neighbor house is worth, $100,000, and now my house that's 3 stories high is now worth $175,000 in the same neighborhood. Do you see what I'm saying? We're all of a sudden going to bring property values up higher.
If someone uses this zone to build fancier houses than the minimum, then they aren't meeting the need for affordable housing maybe, but I don't necessarily want to stop that. I'm not giving them any kickback for zoning this way. Northridge got a kickback. They got to build a less expensive road on the promise that they'd do affordable housing, and then oops, it didn't become affordable housing. We're not talking about that. We're making smaller requirements, but we're limiting the size of the building. That's what we're limiting. The size of the coverage on the lot, which will lead to less expense. If someone builds it out of marble and it's really super expensive, we don't want to interfere with anyone's personal choice that way. But we certainly could do a height restriction. I could see maybe doing that.
I think a height restriction, I don't know what the formula would be, but I think there should be restriction on height because you're going to get somebody that's going to build that 3-story house and block the sun and, the neighbors won't be able to grow grass type of thing. I think that's...
I think that what we've written into our ordinance in other zones is pretty silly, and it really doesn't, we could be more stringent here. In other zones, what's the formula, Ken? Can you say it off the top of your head? Yeah, so your setback increases 1 foot if you go up 10 feet.
That's actually based on the size of the structure, but units, not actually by height. So if it's a 3 to 8 plexes, they have to observe 15 foot versus 10 foot, and et cetera. So
Yeah, I don't want this to get messy.
that's under
I
the
just-
assumption that it will be a bigger building. That's why they
Right.
set it back.
No, I hear you though, and if that is a tool that will help, why not?
I'm only looking out for the future when we're all, I don't, and if you don't think that there's any need for it, then just forget I said anything, because I don't, want to.
I don't feel like if someone were to build a house that isn't considered affordable, that they have wrecked anything or ruined their plans or anything like that. It's a zoning tool that someone can use to plat more lots along a street. And if they decide to build a bigger house within these limitations that we've set, they're just going to bring up probably the value of the other homes around them if they're worth more, because they have more bedrooms or bigger garages or whatever.
But, and even from like the builder's standpoint, isn't it more expensive to build up? So then why would you want to do that when you're trying to turn these houses over? And this is your transition district most likely. And then you will have R1 where you can sell the lot. But I have a feeling these are going to be utilized by builders doing big projects with,
I'd be open to height restriction if you thought it was an important thing. In fact, we'll write one up for your consideration at the next meeting. Next meeting will not be a public hearing. This is the public hearing, but you can debate it and make a motion to include or exclude whatever provisions. How about that? Oh, it is? Yeah. Oh, I take it back. There will be another public hearing.
Yeah. I think the height limitation makes sense. I do. I think that certainly we're trying to put the framework for contractors to build affordable housing, and at the end of the day, it's going to be what the market will bear.
Right.
But to that end, I think putting a height restriction on it at least kind of tries to corral it a little bit so that it doesn't, you don't get a skyscraper, in the middle of a residential
I agree
R1A.
too, because we're trying to contain how much the maximum lot coverage is as far as the first story. So then if we say max 2 stories, then it doesn't let it get out of hand.
Right. Yep.
That's a good point,
Mm-hmm.
Rhonda. Thank you.
Shall we open the public hearing? Vice?
And for the record, Culhane is here.
Late as usual.
Anything else, Sarah, or anything for
No,
Sarah?
unless you have questions for me, I'd say go ahead and open the public hearing.
All right, thank you. Come on up to the microphone. Anybody would like to speak in the public hearing?
Hello. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, you can compliment what I'm going to say. My name is Sherry Graff, and I've been selling real estate for about 28 years. And believe me, Rhonda, we all know it's been a big issue. And I really feel that if we want the city to continue to grow, we have to furnish affordable housing. We have to have it available to people, to the contractors and everybody, so that it can happen. Because if we don't get more housing that is affordable to the income base now, where's it going to go? We're not going to get any new people. That's my 2 cents. And thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else speak before the public hearing?
Mike Carty with Lake Area Tech, but also with a couple of committees in town. So my point is that Watertown has a desperate need for workforce housing is the term I'd like to use instead of affordable. We need to be able to attract young workers into Watertown. We need housing for them, and this lays out the guidelines for enticing developers to do such developments. No matter what's going to happen, you're always going to have somebody that if they can put a more expensive house on it, they'll try to do it, and that's why I think you need to make sure that we're enforcing having the 55%. I think is important, and I think enforcing that will be important down the road because, exactly as you say, as soon as people start adding large garages or these types of things, we'll see that. But we need it both for our workforce and Lake Area Tech can use it also. We have a number of students who come in with families, and they're here for a short amount of time, and they need access to affordable housing. They may not buy the house, but they need to be able to rent those accommodations while they're here. So thank you for your time.
Question for you, Mike.
Sure.
one of the issues is still seemingly in flux a little bit is the 6 foot and 9 foot setback. Do you personally have opinion on going with 6 foot setbacks or keeping with what is the proposal on the table, 6 foot and 9 foot?
I think you need access to the backyards. Unless the only thing I could see a stipulation on that is to let it be 6 foot on both sides if there is an alley access. I don't know if you have alley access or not in any of these, but otherwise I think you'd have to have one side that is 9 foot, otherwise you won't get access.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Mike?
No, I have a question for Sherry, though.
Okay, thank you.
And again, I guess Rhonda, both being...
Sherry, would you please come up to the microphone again, please?
Yes.
I agree with both that we need workforce housing. I guess my concern is, and maybe I've been spoiled, every home I guess I've owned, I've had a garage type of thing and probably bigger than I've needed. But I guess my question is, if we build it, will they come? I like the idea of the R1A, but is it, are we going to get young families that'll come to town with either a detached garage or no garage, or will the market bear it?
Let me tell you this. You agree with me? If we don't do it, they sure are not going to come. Yeah. Because everybody cannot afford it. Oh, Lord. Everybody cannot afford a $300,000, $200,000 house. So we do need workforce housing, and we do need affordable homes. Unless all the employers in this town want to bump up the wages that they all can afford it, yes, then that would be not maybe something that the employers want to do is increase the wages here. But that's a problem, because if you don't make enough money, you can't buy a house. If you can afford a house, then let's go for it. Why not? We have perfect land now. So what do you think?
In your view, what is the? I've asked this question before, and I've gotten various different answers. In your view, with your 28 years experience in the real estate market, where's the wheelhouse? What is the price tag on the houses on these lots?
Okay, I think Rhonda and I can agree. Like 3 bedrooms would be preferable, and normally would it be 180 or 1,040 feet would be the square, the either the length or the width to accommodate 110,000 or 1,040 feet for a starter home. Do you agree, Rhonda? Yeah. So that's what.
So that price would be what?
What?
Or 155, sorry.
Yeah,
Well,
don't
price
forget
point.
the 100.
Price point.
Oh, I have no idea. I didn't come prepared. I came prepared to listen. But I'm sure glad I got a chance to talk.
That would be a first,
Next
Sherry.
time I'll do more.
I said, Sherry, that would be a first if you came to listen. No, I'm teasing.
I know you. We've worked together too long.
But don't you think that first-time home buyer, that's what he's asking you, is where's that price point? Where do they want to buy at? I mean, ideally.
Well, ideally, depending upon what their wages are, it's usually, 20 to 30% of their gross annual, or their gross monthly income or annual income can be that, right?
Right. So we're looking at, and I don't know if this is possible, that 100 to 130, 140, I mean, those hit the market and they're gone. So,
Yeah, they are.
but I don't know that these homes either can be built, you know.
Well,
That's
there again, I think if we can get a bunch of them, a contractor to come in, like we used to have the Habitat, no, not Habitat, what was that group that was called? I can't think of their name now. Happy Homes, yeah. They actually, not necessarily Happy, but there was a group that built like six lots, and then the 6 families would help with a director to make sure everything was going properly. ICAP, yeah, something like that. Anyway, they're all gone because we don't have any affordable lots for them to build on. They actually moved to Brookings, and they're building a lot. We took a trip down to Brookings and seen what they're doing down there, and they're building a lot of workforce affordable housing. 3 bedrooms, single garages, and place to park on the street. Do they? Anything else I can mix up things for?
I thank you.
Okay, it is very important though, and that's really what we need to do, so that's why we're here. And I have another co-conspirator too, but she's telling me what to say. No, not really. I think she'll add her 2 cents too. Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I don't think there's any real question that we absolutely need some sort of solution. I guess the question is how best do we execute it? Mayor, what was the input from developers, local developers, in terms of the setbacks and lot sizes and stuff like that? Are people giving us a thumbs up or a thumbs down, or is there any sort of input?
Generally, 6 feet was thought to be practical, but when you're building, I think it's easy enough once you're gone and the person's there with no alley, no secondary access to the rear. How do they get back there? And we've seen situations like that. They have to get permission to go across neighbors' yards, and sometimes that's not possible, especially in a neighborhood with a bunch of small lots and fences.
And I'm not familiar with everybody that was on the Affordable Housing Committee. Was there developers involved or not?
There were,
Okay.
yes. And, I mean, we didn't have any vote on what we thought was good, just pretty much head nods, and this seems practical. And like Sherry said, if we can get a string of them together, that's where it's really going to be at. People can boom, 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 build 10 foundations on, at the same time, then 10 frames go up, and then you can really cut down on the cost of building if you can get that quantity going.
Is there any likelihood that we'll see sort of small scale development? And I guess maybe 10 at a time isn't very large scale, but when I see this stuff, I always kind of think small and kind of incremental and organic growth as opposed to doing, a section of these at one time. What's your vision in terms of, are we going to do a half a block of these or 10
That's
of them?
kind of what I'm thinking, is from along a frontage from one street to the next, that the whole entire length would be this zone, and you'd get as many lots as you could in there in half of a block, and hopefully we'll see some of those types of developments occurring. But it's just a tool. We can't force people to use it.
And I apologize, I was a little busy and I didn't get all the way through. Do we have a block requirement or half block requirement written into it right the way it is? It says?
Mhm.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, it's included right here.
And you're intending to mix that in like if I were starting a new development, if I wanted that in there, it would just get mixed right in with the R1s? You're not
Right.
doing a whole...
Well, and any type of zoning requires a public hearing, and the neighbors would be notified and given an opportunity to speak. If they didn't want this zone across the street, they could have their say.
So
And
that's in existing?
Yes.
In existing. But what about new?
Well, that's the developer making that decision.
Okay. But you would be, probably would be fine with it
We
just
would be
being
supportive
mixed.
of it.
Okay.
Right, because
Okay.
we know there's a need for this type of zoning. Whether anyone uses it or not, there's maybe not as much profit in building small houses, but we're trying to make it as affordable as possible by reducing our standards to the point that we think is minimally acceptable. And that's what this is. I don't think we have that right now. A lot of cities have smaller lots allowable. For us in Watertown, the smallest lot you can plat today, a new subdivision, is 75 feet of frontage and 9,000 square feet of area. So this is significantly smaller than that, with 50 instead of 75 foot of frontage and 5,000 versus 9,000 square feet.
With this, and I'm going more of a new development than pre-existing, and forgive me, I haven't read through all of this. Is there sidewalks and trees? Have all that stuff been addressed?
None of that's different. We aren't suggesting anything different. Those aren't found in the zoning regulations for lots. Those are found in our street standards. And right now, we're not suggesting any narrower streets or fewer requirements. Sidewalks are required on both sides of every street in all zoning districts. So, we let them off the hook often in industrial zones.
What about fences and all those kind of things? Have those all been addressed?
It'll say
It'll stay the same.
To add to that too, so none of our subdivision regulations will change, other than we'll be adding this district to Title 21 as another zoning option. But then for new development, if a developer wants to come in and is working on their preliminary plan, that's something that comes to you guys and you study it and then put your input and you ultimately approve that. So that's where, I mean, you'll see it if it's coming in new. And the reason for the half block is, I mean, it can be used in redevelopment, but we're intending that this is going to be new development, or assuming.
Diana Ford, just here for myself. A small point, I live on a lot that does not have any side yard access on either side, and it's miserable. So it is really important to have some kind of access to the backside of your house. I know that from personal experience. So I would certainly hope that you consider that in this new zoning plan.
You're referring to the 9-foot setbacks.
The 9 foot on the side, right, in order on one side, so you can access your backyard without having to ask your neighbors or beg your neighbors or whatever.
I do think it actually is a good thing to have written into the ordinance, and I was thinking right away it's 6 foot on both sides too, but it would be the city doing the home buyer a service, because the developer might come in and build this house and no buyer beware of that you might not be able to get to your backyard someday. So us just saying 9 feet on one side, then we're doing people a service that way.
It's just, it makes for a friendlier neighborhood. If you want to keep, people happy with their neighbors, it's just an issue that will not have to come up.
I think that's a good idea, and I mean, I live on a 50-foot lot right now at the lake too, and if I didn't live in a tiny house, you wouldn't have any access to the front, the lakeside.
Anyone else to speak on behalf of this issue? All right, I guess we'll close the public hearing then.
Okay, so to recap kind of on the questions, and I think that we have the should 20 feet of contiguous curb frontage be required and should driveway curb cuts be limited. I think that the discussion led us to the consensus that a 12-foot maximum driveway width or it can be larger if there's 20 feet of contiguous curb frontage. So then they go hand in hand together. And then should one side yard setback be required to be at least 9 feet?
Yes.
And then,
well, I'm just agreeing with what you're saying.
well, and I don't mean to be like coercing you. I was like, yes. And then is 55% maximum lot coverage appropriate?
Correct.
And I mean, we've studied it, and 55 is, I think, the number.
Getting back to the contiguous curbing, is it just easier to say that the curb cut is 12 foot and leave it alone? For simplicity for your staff and me running up saying to Ken, can I have 16 feet instead of 12? It's 12, and don't even come and ask.
What if your double houses wanted, your duplexes or something wanted a combined driveway then?
And then they'll have 20 feet, because I mean they'll have 50 feet of lot width, so then they will have 20 feet. But so this is allowing, if somebody has the frontage, or they designed their lot right, where then they have a 2-stall garage, they could still have a 24-foot driveway for their 2-stall garage, and then, but as long as they left 20 feet of contiguous.
Or if they buy an extra half a lot.
Yes, I was going to add that we're talking about minimums here. Anyone can zone it with larger than minimums. You can put 75-foot frontage and call it R1A. Then what you're essentially doing is limiting the lot coverage. But maybe you could have a little bit wider driveway in that situation.
The main goal there is just to have on-street parking for the public in the right-of-way.
I do like how it's proposed now. I think the other way, you're going to see a lot of people coming before you.
We have a lot of requests for driveway widenings. We've probably had 10 already this year. People come in requesting, and I don't think it's going to change. I think someone else is going to buy a lot that was built with 12 feet, and they're going to say, I want a wider driveway.
The voice of experience. And we do get a lot of requests, and we should have some criteria for saying yes or no that's not random. And the reason that we would limit it is because it takes away the public's right to use the street for parking. And so we want to make sure that's protected before we say yes.
And concrete's expensive.
And the setbacks on the corner lot, that's still being evaluated?
The setbacks are the setbacks. The lot area on a corner lot, I'm suggesting, I think we'll write it in and you can change it out. I think we should make a larger corner lot so that they aren't coming for a variance because they're a corner lot and they have no buildable area because they have this giant setback on two sides. And so just write it right in there, then there's no need for a future variance.
When they plat it, they'll know that one just needs to be larger, because that's what you guys see a lot as the Board of Adjustment, is those corner lots asking for lesser.
But if we're
setbacks
trying to
or
make
having
these
issues.
affordable lots, why are we doing that? To me, it should be just the opposite.
Well, what we should really do is look at the minimum buildable area for a lot and then paint the setback around it. And a corner lot has more setback because it's got two fronts.
Right, I understand
So it
that.
would have that much more spatial requirement. That on a minimum size lot, 50 feet, 5,000 square feet, that would be a 100-foot lot. So 19 extra feet times 100. Or, that's 1,900 feet. So that would be 1,900 instead of 1,000, which is what we proposed. Then you aren't going to be faced with, well, I'm a corner lot. Everyone else on my block has 2,000 square feet of buildable area. I only have 1,000, so that's a hardship for me. And this way, every single lot will have that same buildable area.
More land in order to do that. I'm saying if you narrowed that down, you can leave that lot the same size.
You can leave the lot the same size, but it's not necessarily buildable. We're really down to almost nothing with these 55 feet of maximum coverage and 25, 25, 6.
So don't make the side 25 setback.
Oh, make a different setback in this zone.
Right, in this zone only, because then that lot can stay smaller, so it's still affordable. They're just building closer to the street.
Mm-hmm.
If we're talking affordable.
25 is desirable, though, I believe, for parking vehicles in the driveway. Is that why?
That is part of the reason, and also when you go around the corner, sometimes a house faces one side, sometimes it faces the other. It won't be uniform if you're doing that. And I know we've violated that all over the place in town because we've done the same size lot all down the block, and then every corner lot has a hardship because they don't have enough buildable area. And I'm just saying, let's head that off at the pass. Let's demand enough buildable area, figure out what that bare minimum is, demand it of every lot. That means the corner lot has to be bigger.
So it's just
Yeah, right now, if you left the corner lot the same size as the other, an interior lot would have 1,750 buildable square feet. A corner lot would only have 950 buildable square feet. So if you left it as a 50-footer without changing the setback.
I think we should change the minimum corner lot and tell, I'm saving you future variance requests.
Well, the other thing, too, if you kept it at 25 feet, then you'd have continuity.
Right.
line of sight.
Along the boulevard with the
Right,
line of sight of
because
houses.
if you allow, are you going to do 25 feet on just one side or a lesser setback everywhere, all frontage in this zone? Then that makes it hard for the staff, I think, to have to know which zone it is. Then when someone rezones, you create an immediate nonconformance.
Yeah, we used to have 25 and 30-foot setbacks. Somebody changed that all to 25.
And affordable, that's all. You just made that lot.
You're right.
You know,
You're
that
right.
lot's now gonna be 45,000 instead of 25 like the other. You know, 'cause
Right,
there's
but
more
with
ground.
a
That's all.
tiny little minimum size R1A lot, there really is no, if it's minimum for an interior lot, it's not buildable on the corner lot.
Okay. One more strange question, and this would be a developer's choice, I would imagine, or maybe there's something you guys do. How long can your lots be, or how long can your city block be? I mean, is there a set that it has to?
We need to write that in, and we've flopped around and changed that from time to time. Now we have some blocks that are 1,500, 1,800 feet long, which isn't walkable.
Oh, you like them walkable. So the only reason
300
again
is used to be a rule of thumb, but a street every 300 feet is expensive. Some cities have gone to 500. I think we might say 1,000, which is pretty long. I don't even know if we say it anymore. We've changed it. We're looking at that.
Okay, because that would get rid of our corner lots, our corner lot issue. That
Fewer corner lots.
Right.
You'd still have corner lots, but you're right. There'd be fewer.
Fewer.
And then the other topic that we talked about was limiting the height. So when we bring this to you in 2 weeks, then we'll have that in there about 2 stories. And then this is public right now, so then if people have issues, then they can come to the public hearing at that meeting and express why that would be an issue. Actually, with any of this that we've talked about.
Thank you. So we're postponing any action to June 21st, which is actually going to be another public hearing then.
Yep.
Okay.
And so this isn't even postponed, it was just discussion item. Or did I ask you? Oh yeah, postpone action to June 21st, yep.
It requires a motion then?
No, because we weren't voting on anything.
Don't make a motion.
Yeah.
So we need a motion to postpone what?
We can just bring it back next time. This can just be discussion.
Okay.
Good talk.
Right.
There was no motion on the table to postpone, so it was just a discussion item.
Right. Thank you. All right. Then we'll move on to the next item then, which is open public comment. If anybody was here to sign up to speak to the board. Don't see anybody. Any new business, Brandy?
I was just going to let everybody know that tomorrow at 6:30 at the event center, there will be a community workshop involving the Compesca Master Plan. So if anybody's available and would like to participate, it'll be good discussion and everybody should be a part of it. So, and then at 6 o'clock, they're unveiling the bike trail for the Compesca. So the connection's there.
Thank you.
That's all for new business.
Okay. Item 8, any old business?
Not that I have.
Do we need an executive session?
I don't think so.
Then I guess we're looking for a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion.
Mr. Hanson. Ms. Olson.
Thank you all.
Yeah. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?